The urgency in Ije's voice was unmistakable. It cut through the stillness of the late hour, a jagged edge slicing through the fog of my exhaustion. As I listened to her, I felt an uneasy knot forming in my stomach. She knew my wife and I were in the house, and yet she demanded my attention with a relentless intensity. It was as though she wanted to sever the last thread of stability I clung to, sending me tumbling into the abyss of deceit we had crafted together. Her brand of affection was a twisted paradox, inflicting pain while professing love, a combination that left me bewildered and trapped. The weight of my double life had become a crushing burden. The constant juggling of lies and pretense was taking its toll. I was on the verge of surrendering to sleep when Ije's call yanked me back to the stark reality of my fractured existence. Ije was a bulldog wrapped in a layer of sweetness, her charm a deceptive veneer that masked the harshness beneath. Her demands were becoming increasingly invasive, pressing against the fragile walls of my crumbling facade. I was accurately aware of the risks. Meeting Ije without arousing my wife's suspicion was a precarious balancing act. My wife, blissfully unaware of the infidelities festering beneath our seemingly perfect life, continued to love and trust me with a devotion that made my guilt all the more unbearable. Each departure from her side, each moment I spent in deception felt like a betrayal etched deeper into my conscience. The incident that night had been a breaking point. I had spent the evening with Ije, forgetting to inform my wife of my late return. Her anxiety had transformed into a silent vigil, her patience tested by my absence. When I finally stumbled through the door, my wife was there, waiting. Her simple, innocent comment, an inquiry into my late arrival, triggered something within me. I erupted in an uncontrollable rage, a response that was disproportionate and unjust. In a moment of blind fury, I struck her. It was a foolish, regretful act that left me grumbling with a profound sense of shame. The image of her lying on the couch with her hand pressed against the cheek I had struck was haunting. The physical wound was minor compared to the emotional scare I had inflicted. It was a violation of the very vows I had made to cherish and honor her. My actions were a betrayal of the trust she had placed in me, a trust she had never questioned despite my late nights and unexplained absences. Her fate was a double-edged sword, making it easier for me to continue my deceit, but also magnifying the guilt I carried. In stark contrast to my wife, Ije was a tempest of neediness and instability. Her loneliness drove her to cling to me with an urgency that bordered on desperation. She did not care if my wife discovered our affair. Her focus was on extracting as much from me as possible. Her demands were often made with a sense of urgency that felt like a relentless test of my commitment to her. She pushed boundaries with a cold determination, indifferent to the chaos she was causing in my life. The contrast between my wife and Ije was jarring. My wife, intelligent, beautiful, and endlessly supportive, stood as the ideal partner I had promised to cherish. Yet, despite her virtues, I found myself ensnared by someone who seemed to embody everything that should have been absent from my life. Ije's presence had disrupted the equilibrium of my marriage, plunging me into a state of constant conflict. As I weighed Ije's request, the consequences of each choice became starkly clear. Every visit to her home was a gamble, a risk that threatened to unravel the life I had worked so hard to build. The guilt and regret over my actions loomed large, overshadowing any fleeting comfort I found in our affair. I was torn between the temporary solace Ije provided and the enduring love and commitment I had with my wife. My internal struggle mirrored the broader conflict in my life, a struggle between duty and desire, loyalty and temptation. The more I engaged with EJ, the more I risked losing everything that mattered. Yet, her persistent urgency made it difficult to extricate myself entirely. EJ's demands grew more insistent. Her disregard for my circumstances evident. She expected my presence at all times, even suggesting that I abandon work to be with her. Her manipulative tactics, feigning illness to lure me away from my responsibilities, were becoming increasingly intolerable. I found myself regretting ever meeting her, as her relentless pursuit seemed to taint every aspect of my life. At that night, EJ's fear of being alone was palpable. The pressure to find a partner and start a family drove her to pursue me with a single-minded determination, regardless of the collateral damage. Her willingness to disregard the sanctity of my marriage in her quest for companionship was a glaring testament to the destructive nature of infidelity. Her insatiable desire to charm me for herself was a stark reminder of the perilous consequences of stepping outside a committed relationship. I was living a nightmare of my own making, a lesson in the perils of betrayal and the profound damage it could inflict.